Hey everyone, welcome to the GeniusLevel podcast, the first episode where we talk about the issues of boys and men and everything concerned with boys and men, especially here in Franklin County. Today I have two very special guests. Actually, my name is Maurice Womack. I'm the host and program manager for Genius and Boy Genius. And today I have two very special guests from Franklin County to talk about why do boys and men matter? Today, we sit down with Commissioner Erica Crawley, the driving force behind Boy Genius and the broader Genius Initiative. As the first Black woman to serve as the president of the Franklin County Board of Commissioners, Commissioner Crawley has made it her mission to create pathways of equity, opportunity, and belonging for every resident. Through Genius, she's reimagining how we support boys and men from the cradle to the career by combining literacy, STEM, and mental wellness to unlock their full potential. This conversation explores why she believes empowering boys strengthens entire communities and how this work fits into her larger vision for a thriving, equitable Franklin County. Also joining her is PJ Gamble, Franklin County's early learning policy administrator, who has an extensive background in early learning, deep knowledge on the issues facing boys and men in the educational realm. So welcome.
No, thank you for having us.
Thanks for being here.
Excited about the conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, when first learned about this, I remember thinking that one of the first questions that popped into my head was, why do you care about what happens to boys and men?
Oh, why do I care about what happens to boys and men? Is because, boys and men are the foundation of our community, just like girls and women. We can't have a thriving community if our boys aren't doing well, if our men aren't doing well, if they aren't feeling seen and valued, if they're feeling like they're left behind, if they feel like they can't make a contribution to our community, then how can they really see themselves and see their full potential? Mm-hmm. And so I felt like it was important to have an initiative that highlights their contributions, lifts them up, and make sure that they feel like they're loved, that they matter, and that they absolutely have value.
Absolutely. No, that's great. Now, specifically with Boy Genius, right? Mm-hmm. So Boy Genius is an initiative to bring positive male role models into the pre-K classroom. Now, were there models that you saw around the country where you were like, hey, we need something like that here in Franklin County?
Yeah, well, let me go back real quick to the first question and just elaborate a little bit more, and then I'll talk about how I came to want some kind of initiative for young boys and for men. I came to this from two areas. One, from a mental health perspective, as I talk about my own journey with mental health and trying to break stigma. And I'm also a veteran. And I have met a lot of men who would come to me after I would speak about my own personal experience with mental health and say, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being transparent. I do suffer from depression, or I think I suffer from depression. I haven't been able to see anybody, or I would love to see someone, but I don't feel comfortable, or society says that I'm weak. And I wanted to break that stigma. I wanted to make sure that young men felt like they could, if they were in crisis, that they had a place to turn to, and that they would have mental health professionals that looked like them and understood the backgrounds in which they came from. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have an emphasis on boys and men. And then the other is from a learning perspective. When we look at the outcomes of young boys, they are trending behind girls in a number of different areas, and literacy is one of them. And so that is why I decided that I wanted to have an initiative that just focused on boys, lifting them up, especially around literacy and mental health. So I just wanted to add that. When it came to having an initiative, there is an initiative in Michigan that I had learned about I'm blanking on the name. I'm sure by the end of this, I'll remember the name, or PJ, if you can remember the name, that was focusing on literacy just for boys to increase the literacy rates and kindergarten readiness for young boys. And so I remember going to PJ and saying, or, like, I want to do something bold. I want to do something big. I want to bring something here that is similar, but is more innovative and expansive. And that's how we started collaborating on what is now Boy Genius.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think there's a litany of different inspirations across the country, but no one full package, right? I mean, I think there's packages that we could model in Oakland that are talking about the need for Black men in the classroom. Likewise, there's a program in Cincinnati that we drew a lot of inspiration from. But again, to Commissioner's point, I believe that it was really about designing something from within the community, right? Someone who already knew the struggles of our community, knew the struggles of our boys, and could build around that, really to design a program, not to fix them, but to really design a program that fit them. And so that's really kind of the impetus of how we started.
Got it. So when thinking about the entire cradle to career kind of spectrum, what do you think is missing the most when we're talking about the supports that are required for boys specifically? And let's start at the early education space. What do you think is missing?
Sure. First and foremost, I think there's a brilliant framework, first and foremost, by a man who's no longer with us by the name of Maurice Womack. He was a educator in the space, worked along many years in the space of early learning. And one of the frameworks he used is that all children are looking for place, space, and grace, right? Do I see myself within this classroom, right? So are the environments, the people in the objects in the room, do they look like me, right? And I think we have gotten better in that particular category. The next thing is, again, space. Is there a area in this room, in this classroom, that I am called to that allows me to express myself the way I want to express myself, right? As we know, young men often learn best through curiosity, through exploration, and that's why they are drawn to programs like STEM. And then grace. Oftentimes, I think the biggest shortcoming that we have in classrooms as well as in policy is we do not always give young men the grace when they do fall short. To learn from those lessons, when we often outcast them outside of the classroom because they don't fit into the system, as opposed to fixing the classroom that doesn't quite fit them. And so I think some of the things that we can really work to achieve is that grace piece, right? I think we often turn to things like expulsion and suspension, where I believe that the correction is really in how we actually teach, as opposed to the things that boys are responding to.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I would go upstream just a little bit and talk about just getting our boys here and healthy, right? So when we think about our infant mortality rate, boys are more likely to suffer from infant mortality rates than girls. When we think about preterm births, boys are more likely to experience preterm births than girls. And therefore, if they're born preterm, then more likely they have developmental disabilities, or what we are now calling special rights, than disabilities. Took this term from Italy, a Reggio Emilia approach, where we say people have special rights and therefore are probably more likely to be diagnosed with like autism and other neurodevelopmental disabilities. And so there are times where we know that they need, just from a foundational level, probably more emphasis or more attention developmentally because of just how they even entered the world.
Got it. No, that makes sense. What do you think? So one of the things that we're kind of focused on with Boy Genius specifically is bringing positive male mentorship, role modelship into the classroom, pre-K classroom specifically, and then eventually, broadening that. What do you think are the biggest challenges to recruiting men into the classroom? What are some of the things that are preventing them currently from being in the classroom or being in educational spaces specifically that we need to address?
You want to?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at that. I think it's a collision of a couple different things, right? I think first and foremost, let's talk about wage, right? First and foremost, early learning spaces are some of the lowest wage workers in our workforce, in our labor force. In addition to that, however, I believe that men in particular don't see themselves in the space as well, right? And so it's really hard to recruit men when there are already men there. And then when we do hire the men, we oftentimes put them in positions of janitorial or facilities. We'll put them into some type of disciplinarian role, something that allows them to engage in some type of athletics. So even if you're looking at the K-12 space, you're often looking at gym teachers or resource, teachers or counselors in those worlds. And then beyond that, there's also stigma still, right? I think that's another big piece that we really need to dissect. I think men are not necessarily seen as nurturers. I think we're more oftentimes seen as potential predators, right? And so you see oftentimes men and women who bring their children into an early learning setting often don't feel comfortable with a man or a male figure in their space that allows them to flourish. Would be my first step. So it's really a collision of the fact that it is low wage, right? And so oftentimes men, I think as society, we've often painted them as the provider, right? And so even if I have a desire to be an educator, right? How am I looked towards socially that if I'm not the breadwinner, right? So some of that is even internal too, right? Like just not being able to bring yourself to that particular calling, because it is purpose work, right? This is hard work, but it's heart work, right? The people who are in these rooms day in and day out are people who want to be there, and I believe that oftentimes some of those other things are the things that keep us away.
I would add that I think just holistically, there is still this misconception that when it comes to early learning or pre-K or childcare, that it's a woman's job to take care of children, and women only, and that men aren't seen as caretakers or ones that should be in the classroom. And when we think about early learning or pre-K in particular, like this is education, right? And we know that when we think about Brown versus Board of Education and then the integration of schools, that just the entire workforce for people of color or teachers of color has dwindled since then. And we still, to PJ's point, they're low wage jobs. People are not paid their worth. It's not seen as a position of that's like a public good. Like education is a public good. Child care, early learning is a public good and should be seen as such, and it is not. And so I think there is still this stigma. I think it's still how we view those who teach, who I think also they are pitted against each other when we think about teachers that are K through 12 versus those that are pre-K and childcare workforce or childcare educators. It's us versus them instead of seeing all of them as educators. And so I think there's some socializing that we have to do in the community so teachers are seen, or our educators are seen as teachers, and that men are just as capable as women to be in the classroom and to teach our young children.
Definitely. I know for me, being a father of two girls, that was the whole notion of what you called predatory was always kind of in the back of my head, whether good or bad. I think it's just one of those things that, maybe socially and culturally, we haven't accepted men in that role as readily as we should have. And, oftentimes we think about, things we've seen on TV or stories and that we've read, horrible stories, and men in this space, I think definitely have an uphill battle when it comes to, parents entrusting, especially young kids, to them. So definitely appreciate that, that work that needs to happen. And so hopefully we'll make some inroads here with Boy Genius. Going downstream a little bit from the pre-K space, if we're talking about K-12, because eventually with the Genius Initiative, we want to move downstream, right? Can you tell me about, because I thought a lot about this, any male teachers that you had in your educational journey that were impactful, and how was it maybe different from the engagement you had with your female teachers? Take your time if you need to think a little bit.
And I got to be honest. I mean, from like an educator standpoint, I didn't see a male teacher until I got into middle school, right? And so for me, it was the men in the building, again, the janitors, the gym teachers who still held me accountable, right? And they were able to show me what hard work looked like, what discipline looked like. But unfortunately, I didn't get that from the classroom until I was much older, which I think, quite frankly, can do yourself a disservice when you don't see that positivity day in and day out. Even in middle school, I don't think I really connected with men in the classroom. Again, I'm thinking gym teachers, the black men that I even came across were all in that physical ed space, right? They were all in these elective spaces. And so one of the things I've always thought about is like, you really can't even begin to fathom what you can be if you can't see it, right? And so for most of my educational career, I don't think I even realized that education would have been a pathway for me as a profession, because I just didn't see it until I got to high school, where then I started running into, maybe the history teacher or, things of that nature. But quite frankly, the vast majority of my K-12 space were women, right? And so then you're really starting to look for the women of color, right? Where you can kind of see yourself, right? Where perhaps they see a member of their family in you and they want to protect you and usher you in the right way. But that role model, I didn't have it until high school, right? So thankfully I had great men, great father, right? Great coaches around me, because I actually never got a chance to see it in the classroom.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think I might have had a male teacher in maybe one in junior high, vaguely remember, and then definitely one in high school. My science teacher was a male, but most of the rest were all women teachers. And so I think about, to your point, for the boys and men that I went to school with and were in classes with, if they didn't see it, how could they see themselves being a teacher or going into that line of work later on, or going into education? Definitely had a male when it came to my guidance counselor, but to your point, the elective spaces principals or assistant principals, but in the classroom, mainly it was women. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that definitely plays a role in young men being able to see themselves in the classroom, right? Because I kind of had a similar experience. Principals for sure, Dr. Armstrong from Youngstown, my principal elementary school. And I think in middle school I had a science teacher, Mr. Reynolds, who was he was a guy very cool, down to earth, and like you said, I think at least racially, if you can kind of connect with some teachers, they can kind of see themselves in that as well. So, but definitely a long way to go. What do you think? How does Genius, Commissioner, fit into your broader vision for generational uplift here in Franklin County?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what my vision is a county where we say early care and education is seen as a birthright, but for boys and young men, what I would love for them to see is that what I started out saying, that they are seen, that they're valued, that they matter, and that they feel that love unconditionally, and because they're able to connect with men. That's why mentoring or having volunteers is a huge part of this in the classroom, reading to our young boys. I mean, the fact of the matter is a lot of our young children are in single family households. That doesn't mean that a father is not there by any means, but being able to see them come to the classroom and read to them. And maybe there are other students who might not have a male figure in the household. They're able to see that. And so I want them to be able to see themselves as, able to connect with a male volunteer or a mentor. They're able to be excited about learning and all that entails, and experience joy, like unrequited joy. And so it's really that simple. It's just really that simple. I want them to be happy. I want them to be healthy. I want them to experience joy. But I also want them to be able to see themselves in the men who come and work with them in the classroom.
Great. That's a definitely an inspirational vision you have for the county. I was reading in a report. And this kind of circles back to the mental health crisis for men specifically, that one of the biggest things that men worried about was economic anxiety, right? And so how that feeds into the mental health issues that they have, having this sense of not being able to, as we talked about, even with the types of jobs, right? And being low wage, being able to provide for their family, right? Are there anything specifically that Franklin County is doing from the economics perspective to kind of help men address some of those anxiety points for them? I know that you all have lots of programs in place and initiatives that you're to economically uplift the citizens of Franklin County.
Absolutely. So, I think what we're known for is our workforce development programs. But before I talk about our workforce development programs, I want to talk about our mental health summit and our empowerment summit that was hosted earlier this year, led by Commissioner Boyes, to really break the stigma. I have talked about mental health, talked about my own journey. He has taken that and turned it into a summit, and it was open to everyone. But originally it started out being focused on men to be able to talk about the things that they deal with as men. And so, even though we have a number of workforce development programs, if your mental health is not in a good space, it doesn't matter what job you have, right? If you don't feel good about yourself, if you don't feel good about your life, or, who you are as a human being, then it doesn't matter what job you have. I know people who make 6 figures and struggle mentally, and on a day-to-day basis, the same way someone who may be in a low-wage job might struggle. Now, they have different issues, perhaps, but it doesn't matter the job if your mental health is not good. And so we continue to have Mental Health Mondays, where Commissioner Boyce is talking to people about their own mental health journeys and breaking stigma. And I'll continue to talk about my journey. But from a workforce perspective, we have county futures, where you can come to the county and get, wraparound services, barrier removal services. If you need help getting your driver's license, if you need childcare, you can get a job going right into the middle class and get services to be able to take care of yourself and your family. We have Building Trades Academy. If you are looking to get into the trades, you can select from 17 different trades to go into, where we provide a stipend every week while you're in a pre-apprenticeship program. After you graduate, you go into an apprenticeship program and then can be put on a track to be a journeyman in the trade that whether it's a carpenter, a painter, whatever the case may be, you get to choose. And we have that. We have Driving Futures, and Roads to Work, which is a program to get your CDL, work with the Teamsters Union. And that's a 6-week program where you can get your CDL. Same thing is available, barrier removal services. If you need help getting your driver's license because of whatever may have been in your past, and you get a stipend every week. What we're trying to do is make sure that people who are coming through our doors at Job and Family Services, or who may be low income or no income, have access to the middle class. And these jobs provide that. And so I can go on and on. We have Tech Women of Color to help women of color get into the tech space, but also we have a number of different workforce development programs. Specifically, Broadband Futures is another one. It's open to everyone, but we see mostly men signing up for Broadband Futures. So if you want a job with like AT&T or in fiber, you can, work with one of our partners and get into the broadband space. So we have a number of different programs taking people right into the middle class.
Great. No, I knew you did. But you rattled them off like you had them. You read from a script. That's great. I often read that there's a book. I think it was called American Poverty, where they were talking about that there's so many resources out here that go unused.
Yes.
Right. And I think, maybe, and I know you with your convos with Crawley are doing a lot to make sure that the citizens of Franklin County understand what resources are available to them.
Yeah.
Is a lot of that on the website as well?
No, and I think we need to do a better job of promoting. So Conversations with Crawley is coming up. We have one coming up this month, but we do need to do a better job of making those resources available, because people come to Conversations with Crawley, or Convos with Crawley, as we like to call it, and they're asking the same thing around housing, workforce. Most of the people who come to Convos with Crawley are looking for a job or on a pathway to get into an apprenticeship or a certification program. And so we'll make sure that those resources get on our website under Combos with Crawley.
Okay. Yeah. Great. So let's move into some of the quote unquote hot topic ideas around men and focusing on men, right, relative to women. So there's a lot of talk about the male crisis, right, quote unquote, and what that means to society. And I think we know where you stand, but what specifically, or how do you respond to the critics that say, boys and men have enough, and we need to focus on other genders, and what say you?
Yeah, so I think I don't know what boys and men have enough means, right? Like, I don't know when people say that, I'm like, what does that mean? Because I know men who are struggling financially. I know men who are struggling mentally. I know boys who are struggling in school, just like I know girls who are struggling in school. Like, there aren't enough resources available for boys and men, and for us to say, oh, they have enough, so we need to focus on girls. I think when we think about equity, I think we have to look at individuals and where they are and provide them with what they need to be able to thrive individually. And so to make a generalization to say that boys and men have what they need and we need to focus on girls, I think is one could be damaging and does a disservice to boys and to men. I think we need to look at everyone individually and meet them where they are. And when it comes to like Boy Genius, we know that when it comes to our literacy rates, our kindergarten readiness scores, that boys are lagging behind. That tells us that we might need to put some more resources there for boys to be able to catch up with girls. We know when it comes to college graduation rates that girls are graduating at higher rates than boys, and that boys are dropping out at higher rates than girls. That maybe we need to put more resources there. But I can say the same thing when it comes to when we think about STEM. We know that, or even in the tech space, that's why we ended up having tech women of color, because you have more men in the tech space than you have women. So we wanted to put more resources there. We just look at things from an equitable perspective. And so to say that boys and men have everything that they need, and so therefore they're good, I think is harmful. And really can set our boys back if we don't continue to look at them as individuals, and not as like a collective, and try to meet them where they are.
Great. No, that's great.
Listen. I mean, all you can do is double click on what she just said. I agree. I think oftentimes policymakers, these systems that we create, I think sometimes we believe that gender neutrality, right, is a safe thing to do. But to Commissioner's point, safety is not the same as being seen. And I think Boy Genius is about belonging. I think we do our boys a disservice if we do not name the problem, state the problem, like Commissioner just said. If you look at the history of how far we've come in this country, and in many places in the world with women's rights, right? You don't get that far without naming it, right? And so, to Commissioner's point, we really have to make sure that we are catering and allowing people to be themselves and show up authentically. And I think we've got to design systems that allow people to do that.
Absolutely. As a woman leader and a mother, what role do you think that women can play, and we're moving a little bit off the educational piece here, in redefining masculinity and supporting boys?
Yeah. I was thinking about that question, and like when I think about masculinity, or when I think about manhood, I think of it in two different ways. I think about manhood as like the state of becoming a male, or a male becoming a man, and that is quote unquote manhood. You've entered manhood, or some rite of passage to get you to that place. But then I think about the societal expectations that are put on men, and what manhood means, and what masculinity means. And I think for women, what we can do is, well, let me go back. When we think about masculinity, one thing that we've been trying to break down is telling men, like, you got to be strong. You can't show emotion. To show vulnerability means that you're weak. Like, we have to change that narrative. And I think especially for women who are raising boys, like, it's okay to raise boys to be emotionally intelligent, right? It's okay to raise boys to be vulnerable, to be able to share and express their emotions in a constructive way. I think we can support our men in their as they grow and try to break the chains of society's expectation on what leadership means or what a provider means. And, there are these gender roles that society has put in place. But I think one reason why we have one of the mental health crisis that we have is because men are expected to be a certain way, and to deviate from that means that you're not a man or you're less than a man. And I think for women and girls, we can encourage, no, it's okay to cry. It's okay to show emotion. It's okay to meet me in a place where if I'm, being emotional, or if I'm sharing in a vulnerable space, that you share too. Like, there can be an exchange, and it doesn't mean that I'm less than or that he's less than. I think that's one way that women can show up for men, or try to break some of these societal norms that are arbitrary, right? And that keeps people from being their full authentic selves. So.
Okay. The one thing I will do is shed a tear. So
it's
always
necessary.
joke like from Friday when we said he gonna cry in the car.
Yeah.
I will cry in the car, So
but
honestly, I feel like it's a release,
It
It's
is
necessary.
and it's something I learned very early. I lost my father when I was 18. And so this idea of like releasing this built up tension has always kind of served me well and allowed me to stay even keeled. Because as you mentioned, I think a lot of that is pent up and never gets released, and leads to other, things that come out. So.
But I think also, like, I grew up where my mother would say, you never let people see you cry. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, I grew up that way, and I never saw my mom cry until my great aunt passed away. And even when my mom passed away, I felt like I had to keep it together, right? And I know we're talking about men, but for women and being able to show up for men, I think having that mentality, well, never let people see you cry, it can be toxic, right? Like, no, like people need to see that you're a human being, and that you have real life experiences, and that you feel things, and that's okay. And so we need to, I appreciate you sharing that you don't have a problem shedding a tear, but there are a lot of people who do. And, that can cause stress, it causes anxiety, high blood pressure. I mean, it impacts your physical health, not just your mental health.
For sure.
We were talking the other day, and I was saying, before we can teach our young men and men to be strong, we really have to teach them how to be whole. I was listening to Jason Wilson, in his most recent book release, and he was saying that the difference between men and women oftentimes are the vocabulary and how many expressions and feelings that they have too, right? Men often only have like the 8 box of crayons of emotions, right? Anger, and whereas women often have that 64. And like, so how do we get more men, more boys to that box of 64 so we can find ways to release, right? And show up whole. And so you did an amazing job of explaining how women can do that, because I do believe it starts very, very, very early.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Jason Wilson's idea of a comprehensive man. Right?
Absolutely.
So showing up at different times in different spaces with the proper tools for each occasion. So, so just kind of wrapping up, one of the mantras of Boy Genius specifically is this quote from Frederick Douglass. It says, "It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." Obviously, the Genius Initiative is an attempt to do that. So, what are your thoughts on that quote and going forward with the Genius Initiative?
Yeah, no. I mean, I think a lot of this conversation has really hit on many of those things, but I think first and foremost, I think it's we've got to do a better job of teaching our males to express themselves. I think oftentimes what we see as opportunities for boys to act out is a call. It is a cry for help, and we've really got to change the systems to make sure that we're listening to what those cries actually are. It might show up oftentimes as anger, but I think we really need to start equipping our boys to verbalize and express themselves a little better. And I think that is something that this program can do, right? When you're leaning into things like literacy and STEM, those are easy ways to allow men to do so, and young men to do so. And quite frankly, I think a lot of people are thinking about this idea that boy genius is for boys, but it's for children, right? I think we are really not excluding our young women either, right? I think they benefit from having positive males in the classroom as well, and I think that's what this whole genius framework is really all about, right? Is how do we create this continuum that shows young boys from a young age what genius really is all about, right? How do we move from that black boy magic or black girl magic? How is that just no longer exceptional, but to be expected too, right? And I think we should expect that from all our children, right? And once we give them the tools to do that, I think a program like this will be that first step. But beyond that, to get to your true question, right? Like how do we continue to build strong young boys? I think first and foremost, we're going to have to show them great examples, show them that education matters and it's important, right? And so even for men to come in and volunteer their time with things like reading shows that reading matters to them as well. I think we're going to have to continue to hit the notes on how important of a workforce this is. To Commissioner's point, I think this is indeed a public good, and so we really need to shift the culture. So this is a change in culture as well, and so those are a few things that I think have been really sitting with me, is really how do we shift a culture? How do we change a society one step at a time? And I think this is a program that's going to do that.
Yeah, when I think about literacy and what it can do for our young boys, one, when you can have more self-confidence when you're learning, when you are reading and you know what you're reading and you can remember, you can recall it, and you know what you're talking about. So I think about that. I think about being able to be fully self-expressed through literacy and what comes with that when we're engaging with our young boys. When I think about STEM and I think about the analytics and analytical thinking that has to go into that, helps also make them more confident. And so I think, what we are going to be providing is an opportunity for our boys and men to come into a space and be fully self-expressed, be fully authentic, and be able to be in a space that's created for them to really learn at like how they like to learn, not be put in a box. And you got to sit down and you have to be quiet. You got to learn this way. It's like, no, you'll have people in the classroom working side by side with teachers that'll allow them to be free and to learn in a way that, obviously assessments are a thing, but I think you'll see different outcomes because this approach is a little bit different, and we're working side by side, teachers or our male role models and our volunteers. But I think when we start early on, allowing our children to be fully self-expressed, that's how you have men that don't need to be fixed, right? And when I say, and I hate to say fixed as if like something's wrong, or like they may be broken, but broken by society's standards and expectations, right?
Absolutely.
That they haven't been able to, be themselves in a way where they felt like they would be accepted and be true to who they are. And I think when we start early on, we don't have to fix broken men because we have allowed we have created spaces and created environments where learning is a right, and people, and especially our young kids, can flourish in that. And so I love that quote, but I'm like, this is what this initiative can do. It's not just a program. It's not like another program. It's like we're working with people. This is a full initiative that is impacting lives in a transformative way. And so I think when we start early, then some of the things that we are seeing with men today, we no longer will see because we've attacked it at the root from the beginning.
Absolutely. Wow. I love it. I love it. I love it. So that's all I had. That's all I had. Did you have any last words you wanted to include for the podcast or for?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the conversation. I am excited about this initiative. I would love to see people sign up to be volunteers and mentors. The ask isn't a burden of time. It's really as you can fit this into your schedule and be a volunteer and be in the classroom and work with our teachers and work with our students. So I would love for people to sign up and definitely follow on social media.
Great. Yeah, definitely. So if you haven't already signed up, go to GeniusLevel.org to become a guest reader. As the commissioner said, no long-term commitments. We really just throw your name in the hat, and we'll definitely try to get you involved the best way we can. And it's just a little bit of your time will have a great impact. So that's it for our first episode of the Genius Level podcast. Thank you to my guests, PJ Gamble and Commissioner Erica Crawley.
Thank you.
First of many podcasts around this topic, because it's a very important topic. So I appreciate you. And that's it.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.